Tabor talking through the early slate of this MLB. There's two split slates. There's a big one tonight. They're both big ones. And they've got a lot of good tournaments for both. 6:30 Eastern, so we'll go live at 5:30 Eastern. We'll touch on NBA during that as well. I had a decent NBA night where I had a chance to win the $4 again. Somehow it keeps almost coming through, and then just didn't quite get enough oomph at the very end, but had a lot of the Patrick Beverley at 5% ownership, and that was nice. I did play the other speculative guys. I ended up, obviously the only one you wanted was Connaughton, but he was terrific, so that was good. So decent there, and not a good MLB slate. I was winning everything, and I was up in everything in MLB when I went to sleep, but then when I woke up, everything had changed. So, Sheets, how did you do?
I did okay in the Bobby Firestone Open. I got like 4th or 5th in the 250 on.
Oh, that's right. You had a real run there.
Yeah, and then ran out of innings at the end. But who hit the home run to get me? Oh, somebody with the freaking Castellano home run annoyed me.
Oh yeah.
Among other things.
Late too.
I'd also like to vent just a little bit. I mean, it's you could call it coaching, call it just a player. It's like how stupid can a person be? But like. How did the Knicks lose that game? I mean, like, how does Mitch Robb get within 40 feet of that freaking dude? Like the only guy who's like the most foul-prone person in the world. They're up 6 freaking points. All right. The only way that you get this team back in the game is to do what he freaking did. He leaves his man to come freaking through some wild freaking closeout on Tyrese Maxey. Gets the freaking foul called. Okay, that's like mistake number. Like that's like a 99.999 percentile error, okay? And then, like even with that, and even with freaking Josh Hart breaking the free throw, how do you not freaking take Tyrese Maxey and body slam him when you're up 3 with 10 seconds to go? What are you doing? So listen, I talk about the coaching stuff all the time. I do the AAU stuff. And you get into the highest level of the NBA. I mean, Thibodeau, whatever it is, I don't care what awards he's won or whatever the hell he's done. That was a complete and utter failure down the stretch. And I'm glad the Knicks lost in overtime so that people can remember it and he didn't get bailed out. But that was a freaking disaster. And part of me really hopes the Knicks lose. But nonetheless, still up 3-2. So they're still a favorite to win.
They literally, it would have been almost impossible for them to lose that game. I mean, literally like impossible for them.
Impossible. They'd have to really try.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not like there was like a mishap on offense. It just was, like you said, not fouling. That was sort of glaring. And then fouling when on a 3-point shot, that was ridiculous. But it was separately. I mean, I agree with you. I'd be frustrated as a Knicks fan. It was an unbelievable like fourth quarter for Maxey because they could have been blown out like 5 times in that fourth quarter, and every time he seemed to hit a big shot. And then those 2 at the end were just unbelievable. But yeah, that was rough. I mean, unfortunately, it was good for my betting because I had Philly to win and Philly to cover and the over in the game. So all of it worked out for me personally. Nice. But I feel for you, man.
So there's a lot of content. There's a lot of stuff today, as you mentioned, like 2 full slates with full tournaments. And we'll get to all of it, and a weird start time for the 6:30. And then like
tomorrow's
schedule. The NBA, it's a lot to do. But
yeah,
before we get into the slate, I would like to also shout out again to my freaking heroes playing in front of no fans. The Oakland A's once again stick it to the Pirates and the 70% ownership in my survivor pool that have the Pirates this week. So that's going to be really, really big. If we could pull the sweep off, then we're really in business.
Hey, you got a shot today. We'll get into it.
Yep. All right. So I guess
go ahead. I was going to give you a heads up that because of all this stuff today, there will be an extremely light day tomorrow because everything ends by like 10 a.m. One baseball game at like 4 p.m. and they're sort of doing this with the Thursdays right now. So, all right. So
there's no big slate tomorrow night.
No, there's no slate. So I don't think there is any baseball slate.
God bless you.
So
I'm going to the city with Ashley tomorrow night anyway. So perfect. Just
perfect. All right. Well, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about the St. Louis Detroit to start things off.
That's another one that might be have a kind of a thin attendance maybe. The Detroit home game in the middle of the day. Eeks.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing either of these pitchers show up. I know that you're always down for some Mikolas in general, and if you're getting Mikolas against the Tigers at 6,500 at no ownership, I'll let you recommend it if you want. I'm not really getting to it, and as far as the hitting is concerned, I'm definitely not getting to either sets of bets.
Yeah. So this is
Wait, hold on. Before you go on, I lied. I am getting. I see St. Louis is showing up as decent value on the hitting side. So now you can go ahead.
Yeah. So I like every slate is totally unique. There are other cheap pitchers to play on this slate that I like as much or better than both these pitchers. Mikolas, we've been playing him at like 5K, 5,500, and by the way, he was pretty good twice and really bad once when I used him so far this season. So and pretty good meaning like a 5K when he's getting 15 fantasy points, that's fine. He's getting a little more pricey now. We do have some guys who I think are going to score on this slate, pitching wise. So Maeda can always, have a flashback game. He looked better his last time out. Mikolas could mow him down just by getting the better side of the BABIP. But I don't think that this is like a spot you need to take. I wouldn't have minded if I ended up building towards these guys. I'm only playing a couple lineups, a big one and a medium one, and I didn't get to anything. And at the same time, I understand the logic with St. Louis, like, oh, maybe Maeda's just like past, he's done and all this stuff, and he's sort of off and on and struggles consistently. So I understand it. They're just such a bad offense. I don't generally want to play them, but there's not a whole lot that I like on this slate. So you can definitely consider them for the moment because not a lot of stacks that I like. I do think there's some pitching options that are interesting, but not a lot of great stacks. All right.
So we'll put the St. Louis guys in for now, and then we'll see if we can find something better later.
There you go. All right. Eflin and Ray in Milwaukee.
No, I mean, not really. I'm getting like Eflin. I have him as my 8th best pitcher or something like that. I mean, less than 10% ownership I'm seeing, so that's something, but not really getting to too much. I'm not getting much Colin Ray, if at all. Hitting wise, Tampa. I do have Tampa as value here. So Tampa, I have them rated 3rd, just above St. Louis as far as kind of like a value stack is concerned. Again, Tampa always comes with its own set of issues, but I do show them as being, I guess, cheap enough to show up as value stack. So I will say Tampa with pretty much all I would do from this.
We're pretty much in lockstep. I do want to say that if I was multi-entering, I would be well over the field in the large field stuff on Zach Eflin. You have a team, like Eflin, we've seen the good and the bad, and there's a lot of good pitching options on this slate. I think there's Milwaukee's offense is one that we've seen some huge performances against them so far. That would be my wild card play of this, but mostly I'm in my 2 lineups. I'm not going to get to Eflin, or my 3 or 4, whatever it ends up being. But I do like the Tampa Bay as something to do. It's an interesting, weird thing because the guys who are expensive are probably too expensive, like in general, to make a lot of sense. But you have the value. You can partner in with it with guys like Shenton and Goodrum and at 2,300. So it does actually balance out the stack pretty nicely. The problem is Ray is not good, but the bullpen is pretty strong, and that's what you're going to be dealing with is a lot of a bullpen game. I still think Tampa Bay is extremely viable. I love park upgrades. It's a park upgrade for them. So I have Tampa as totally viable and near the top of my list on the slate where I don't like that much that's off the chalk. So I kind of like that idea. All right.
It is a day ending in Y. So there are 2 things that must be true. Number 1 is that a pitcher against Chicago White Sox is going to look decent, and the Minnesota Twins are going to show up as the best value on the slate because they always do. At least for now. Let's just see if that's the case. Yep, there it is. So I have Minnesota showing up as the best value on the slate, and I also see them being the highest owned bit of business on the slate as well. And then I see Bailey Ober. I have him, right up alongside of a couple of others as being viable. I'm seeing him getting owned as well. It's like 25%. So you're not getting any bargains there, obviously, against the White Sox. But, yeah, so Minnesota chalk, Bailey Ober chalk. I don't know. What do you think?
So Minnesota, so I'm in on the. I don't think Ober is actually going to be. I mean, he'll be owned. Don't get me wrong, but I like. There's a lot of pitchers to like. I actually think the ownership might be around 20% on him.
Yeah,
and
it
that's
could be
totally fine with me. I say we play him. That's my plan.
Sounds good.
As far as the Minnesota bats, I mean,
you usually have some like respect for flexing.
Well, I just try to point out that when everybody stacking against the guy when he moved from Colorado to Seattle like he did last year,
Right.
that was why I was on the hey, don't overstack against this guy just because we're using Colorado numbers, which people don't factor in when they're talking about stuff, when they're touting whatever. I don't really have any like for flexing, but he's clearly. I mean, I think he's pretty clearly the worst pitcher on the slate, and I think that Minnesota is in the best spot and it's the best hitting weather. Pretty much your cash games should look like Minnesota builds, I think. Minnesota, surprisingly, this year has actually the problem is they've got an average offense, but usually two or three of their guys end up getting pinch hit for. So you take an average offense where you're going to lose at least probably one or two of the guys you're playing, makes it a little bit trickier. But an average offense is pretty, that's better than it seems for Minnesota. Like watching them, it doesn't seem like they've had an average offense, but all the numbers will tell you that they do. And they're playing the White Sox and they're playing flexing in the good hitting environment in Chicago. I look, it's a small slate, and I'm still probably I'm gonna probably end up playing some Minnesota. Now, I guess I'll try to do my thing where maybe I'll play them in a 4-4, or maybe I'll play 3 of them. But honestly, I could see myself 5-man stacking them, and I don't love stacking chalk, but there's not a lot that I like here. Super large field, I would consider stacking the White Sox as a value. You could double spend up a pitcher. You can jam the White Sox in with whatever other that you could play the White Sox with Minnesota, and play the two top stud pitchers, but that's nothing I'm going to get to today myself.
So It seems though last night we kind of cemented our World Series Game 1 starter in Cole Reagans. That's
He's awesome, huh?
That's locked down. So Singer is just dropped off to 2-3. He's going to be battling Lugo for the 2-3 hole, I think. I think Marsh will be part of a bullpen game, I think, in the next game. So yeah. Listen, Lugo wants to cement his Game 2 startership here. I usually don't play him, so I'm probably going to stick to that and probably not play him today. I think that Bassett though has. He always has upside, and I didn't get any ownership projection on him before. Maybe he's like a late addition. I don't know if he's was just announced that he was starting, whatever it is. But what you have going for you is that in this last game he got smoked by the Dodgers. Okay, yeah. And in the game before that he wasn't any bargain either. But he comes home. Not that Toronto's a good home, no home park really, but he's home and. Against Kansas City, who's definitely worse than the Dodgers as far as hitting goes, and I would say worse than the Yankees and Houston and other teams he's been up against. I love the fact that he threw that 115 pitches against Seattle in that game. So if they need him, he'll pitch.
And by the way, that even hurt. I had him that night, and it actually lowered his score because I was like, they brought him back out to come out in this, and I think it was a 7th or 8th. He was starting the inning with 108 pitches thrown. And I'm like, oh my God, they're just letting him, and he has that kind of a leash.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Shoots.
Oh no, I was gonna say. So I think Bassett's is definitely.
Yeah, and it's it's hard. The Royals, I'm not picking on the Royals much anymore. That's the only problem. Like they are the second lowest strikeout team in baseball this season. The offense has looked pretty adequate, but on top of it, the fact that they're just aggressive and they don't strike out makes it a little bit harder. Now it gives Bassett, maybe it would make him a good FanDuel play or something because the 6 innings seems more possible, But I just think there's a lot of good pitching, and I have Ober ahead of Bassett, but I do have Bassett on my list. I'm still considering it. Just feels kind of wrong with how little strikeouts we've seen from this Royals team so far. I mean, they're right down there at the bottom. The odd thing is they're right next to Houston is actually the lowest strikeout team in baseball this year, which is kind of shocking because they're offense until yesterday was terrible. But yeah, so this game feels. I think Toronto is the other team I could talk myself into. The only issue is like Lugo's been really good, but I don't think Lugo is really good. So I think he's okay. And an okay pitcher stacking a lower owned, offense certainly on my mind today. I think Toronto is, they're in the consideration for me anyway. All right, now we get into the other guy.
Well, here we go. We're going to go for the sweep here. We have Oakland home against Pittsburgh, and you have Ross Stripling, who is 6,200, who has pitched 97, 85, 101, 97, 85 pitches. Okay, he's not exactly racking up the fantasy points to say the least, but he's 6,200. So I will say that. The other thing I will say is that Oakland themselves, I have them as second best value overall as far as stats go. Now, not really the raw upside, really, but I guess they're really, really cheap and they're just kind of showing up. So I do like Oakland. I hope I don't have to play Stripling. But he's certainly totally okay at 6,200.
I actually think that if I had to pick between the two pitchers, I'd pick Quinn Priester.
Okay.
Priester's got stuff. He's going to be a good pitcher someday. He's had all of his matchups but one have been nightmare matchups, like Cleveland, Boston, in Boston. Like he just had like tough. I think it was in. I don't remember who all the. No, I'm sorry. I might be thinking of somebody else. But I think that he's got like enough. You could gamble, but do we need to gamble? Because you've got Bailey Ober only 600 more. You've got, Bassett only 900 more. Stripling at 62 does, it does seem like a viable option, but like, what are we saving that money to spend on unless you're playing specifically the Phillies or the Braves? When I looked at the slate initially, for some reason, I thought the Dodgers were on the afternoon slate, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll just play Stripling. That way I can get to the Dodgers. Now I don't have to, I can't do that. So I probably end up mostly off of this. I actually think you're going to have some ownership here, and I don't mind it. Like, this is the other value is the A's. I mean, that Tyler Nevin just seems to put up double-digit points every night, and he's 2,500 still. You've got Lawrence Butler, who's supposed to be leading off at 23. Langoliers, who's hit, six home runs this year?
He has like 30 home runs already this year, right?
Yeah, Langoliers at 35. I could see getting exposed to the hitting in this game. It's also, for what it's worth, it's like a nicer day a little bit up north. 72 degrees in the Bay is always nice. And there's 12-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. This game only has a 7.5 total. I guess my best take would be it's interesting because I said I like the pitchers a little bit, but I think the over on the best way to play this game is probably just betting the over on the game. It just seems a little bit too low to me. All right, next up, Atlanta, Seattle.
Well, so much for our idea about the fading Luis Castillo last night.
Yeah.
Atlanta, I don't think they let a guy get to second base. It was he was rough. He was tough.
You had a great one.
All right, so this is gonna test my mental fortitude here, or my intestinal fortitude, because Chris Sale is one of the high strikeout projected guys on the slate in a good ballpark at 35% ownership. Then I have this freaking bias that I don't want to play these freaking lefties against Seattle, and I don't know what to do. I'll let the Sims help me out a little bit, but he certainly projects to be one of the top two pitchers on the slate. And Seattle is free swinging, and they do strike out a ton. So I'll probably end up using him. I don't know. I'm not going to play Hancock at 6,600. And as far as the hitting side of this, I'd love for Atlanta to score one run at some point, but it is a big downgrade from going against Bryce Miller / Luis Castillo for finally trying to get out of that freaking stadium alive against Hancock. Not that Hancock's the worst, but he's certainly worse than those two. So I guess keep trying the Braves until they score a run. I don't know. They certainly don't project all that great. So as far as projection goes, it would be Sale and nothing. What do you think?
Just say, by the way, Atlanta was very surprised they didn't win that game last night because they had all the chances to score in the ninth, and they lost 3-2, but they had a chance to get there.
Not against Castillo, they didn't.
No, not against Castillo. They couldn't touch Castillo for some reason. Look, I think I understand the stuff with Atlanta. That's the most likely thing that's the thing that makes the most sense if you're going to spend down at pitching to me is to take a shot against Hancock. Did we see? Let me just double check something with Hancock, because I actually thought that like I had something on him. No, I don't. I think Hancock is going to be a good pitcher. I think this is a tall task for right now. He's already pitched well at Coors, though. He pitched well against Arizona and Chicago and some good teams, to be honest. I don't know what to do, because I feel like Atlanta is going to break through, and maybe I just do that. But the problem is that means I am probably spending in the Ober and maybe one of Priest or Stripling range. Whereas I do think the pitchers on this slate, whether it's Sale, and Sale is my second favorite pitcher on the slate, or second, I expect him to be the second, highest scoring. Man, no, I just have a little bit of a hard time with it. I can't, if I get both spend ups in, I'm gonna have a very narrow, like everybody's going to build that way with the cheap Oakland or something and Minnesota or something like that. It's all going to be some version of some form of something like that. I don't want to just build into what everybody builds. So the thing to do to get different might be playing Atlanta. And I think I might bite and just say, F the last few games. This game was in Atlanta. They'd have a 5.5 total, 6 total maybe, and they'd be the chalk. Maybe I just suck it up and just say I'm playing the Braves today. That's what I'm considering. And I do like Sale as an option. I just happen to like Wheeler better.
Yeah, so we go to Philly, LA, and with Trout out, for he's going to have surgery on his meniscus. It's going to be, screaming pitchers against the Angel season, I think, for a while. Starting with Zach Wheeler, who's got strikeout upside as well. So he alongside, I guess you were alluding to, he alongside of Sale are the two, highest projected raw point scorer. And he's certainly no bargain, right? 11K. And if you want to play both him and Sale, like you said, that's where all this Oakland ownership will come from and this Minnesota ownership will come from, because those are the teams you're going to have to play to get to those two. And they look pretty good, honestly. Mm-hmm. But he certainly looks like a good play, Wheeler. Sandoval, I will probably played worse pitchers, but I'm certainly not going to play him in my big buy-in. If I get to him by accident, I'll play some of him, but not going to be any big hurry to play him. As far as hitting goes, I'm not really – you know what? I'm getting to Philly if you can afford him, right? So you were talking about like which teams to use if you could pay down a pitching. I currently have Philly rated just as high, if not higher, than Atlanta. And as a result, Philly also is probably more going to be chalkier than Atlanta.
Yeah.
So, but that's the way it looks, like Philly and Wheeler and probably nothing on the other side.
Yeah, I love Wheeler. It's just, how do you play Wheeler with Philly or Atlanta? Like you said, I do think Philly will have, like, Atlanta's going to be like sub 5% owned each player, basically. Philly's going to have some guys who are double digit owned or whatever, but still on the lower owned side of things. And it's interesting because, so I actually don't like, Sandoval is a very streaky pitcher, but he's the kind of pitcher that I could see having a nightmare against the Phillies, because they are really, really patient. And it's not even that they just like are patient and they walk. They work counts. They make you really work for it. And when that happens with Sandoval, those 4 or 5 walk games seem to happen a lot for him, and it makes me worried. So I think that Philly is a really good idea. I think Philly's the obvious idea. Atlanta's the get creative idea. But even with the obvious Philly, I don't think it's easy to play them. It's really hard to get those guys in. They're just so expensive. So maybe I'm going to have to change my tune and go a little different, because it's really going to be about getting off Minnesota shot. I really think Minnesota players you're going to have guys like, I think there's going to be like 4 guys at least 30% owned. So in order to do that, I wanted to find the other offenses I like. I mentioned Tampa Bay as a sneaky one, but Atlanta, Philly are the two that I sort of feel the best about. And unfortunately, they're really, really hard to get to.
Yeah, I'm just kind of fiddling around, and you can play Sale and Wheeler together, but when you do that, that's when you're really getting these Minnesotas. You could play that Shenton guy from Tampa, like you mentioned, 2,600. So you could definitely do this, but you certainly can't do it with any of the higher scoring teams.
No, it's basically impossible. I tried it.
All right, so Cincinnati against San Diego. I mean, I got Musgrove rated pretty well actually today, and as usual, he's going to take a little bit of ownership as he usually does, and it really does depend on what you want to do with the hitting. You know, like if you want to get access to some of those better teams, I mean, you really don't want to play Wheeler and Sale together, and you need an SP2 that's worth it. And there's is he better than Ober? I guess is a very good question. Same price, pretty much similar ownership, I guess. Ober's got the better matchup. Not exactly sure who's the better pitcher.
Ober.
Well, then that kind of solves all.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, that's my take, but we never know what Musgrove. Musgrove, when he's on, is unbelievable, but I haven't seen him on in like 2 years.
So listen, he's certainly on the list of reasonably priced SP2s, and I like him better than Colin Ray, if that helps. Probably not too much. Ashcraft on the other side, I wouldn't think of getting to him at 8,800 against San Diego. Just kind of talking through this. I just wanted to see if I'd be getting to San Diego here at all. Not really.
Yeah, so I'm very my tilt is, come on, San Diego last night. Like, they scored 6 runs.
They had bases loaded, no out in the first.
I know, and two times, and I had all my guys, and that was my main stack, and I felt like I was going to win all the money, and it just, nobody could get a hit with the runners on in the right spots. It just was very irritating. Having said that, they are the other stack that I have today as the most interesting.
Okay.
I don't know why I have to give Graham Ashcraft some sort of crazy respect. I also don't think I need to give Joe Musgrove any respect until he earns it. So until he earns it back, I should say. I would just play. I would consider this as another pivot spot. And my first build was San Diego with Minnesota mini stack. My second build is probably going to be some version of Atlanta or Philly with Tampa Bay value. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing today. Ober, Wheeler are my favorites, followed by Sale. I mean, this is all different prices. Sale, and then I think you get into the Priester, Stripling, Bassett if you want to play those real big spend up teams. That's sort of what I got today. So in order to do this, Sheets, you want to we get out of here and then we do the main slate in like 10, 15 minutes. Is that okay? Maybe
12:45.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, and then we got a little golf stuff afterwards. So a lot of stuff going on.
Okay.
All right. Good luck to everybody. We'll see you.